Things about the adolescent age and the pre-adolescent age and why we teenagers are different from the other people and why we need special attention.
The junior children also have a bond with these animators, and they can call them at night also, get their problems sorted out, and so much confidence the children have built up in themselves.
There is a drastic change that we have seen in the animators. First of all, they themselves are very disciplined, and they try to create the same atmosphere around them in the classes. They try to motivate the children, and the best thing is that these children, they play as a role model for other children.
It has changed actually, so not only with the JYPs or our teammates, but with other friends also. Sometimes we talk to them about our service projects. We tell them what we do. They also become interested. Yeah, yes, yeah, you're doing a wonderful job and all. So it has really changed the topics of our that we usually talk, but now we talk a little sense.
This junior youth program made me realize that these students who were trying to run the junior youth program, they were not like teachers. They were like friends to us. They were trying to make us realize that we are not alone. We can share our problems, we can share our solutions with someone who can understand and give the solutions for our problems.
The interaction between us is so awesome, and that feeling of that they're listening to us and they say like, Didi, what's the answer of this? Like, that makes me feel so happy. I love it.
I talked to my parents for joining this program. They were like, what will happen in the future with this program? What will you get from this by doing it? They were like, you have a small brother, you discuss everything with him. He will also face some problems you are facing. So if you cannot discuss with me, you can discuss with others. You have so many cousins. So I was against them. I did not tell them and I joined it. And after some time, after 3-4 weeks, they said that you are speaking so much. You are too shy speaking very thing. I was in class 6 when my class teacher, she complained about me. She said that, ma'am, everything is good, but she's very shy. She does not speak at all. She's the most quiet child. And after that, the teachers did not say anything because I was so interacted with the children. I speak to them so much that I was in a habit to speak to my parents also, everything, and then my brother also. So this was the change that was brought about me. Then after 1 month, I told them that I have joined JYP, and this was the reason that I have started speaking so much. And after that, they were likely permitting me, yes, you can join that. So if they see a change in us, they likely permit us to do that.
JYP is a really empowering program for the kids, for the facilitators, for the animators, and everybody around. You don't only attend JYP, you imbibe it in your lives. It is a really empowering program, and I suggest more and more people should join it and help everyone and themselves. Thank you.
I want to mention that a couple of months ago, we started to do the preparation, the video recording of the learning of each campus of CMS, each of the 9 campuses of CMS, where the program has been running. And it's a video footage that requires a lot of time to edit, because it has gone into a number of gigabytes and all that. I had to give my hard drive because they could not save it on any pen drive to give it to me. Now, because we wanted also to just capture only about 15 minutes in a video documentary and say what are some of the impacts of the program, that is why we had to really limit it. Otherwise, we have such beautiful comments from our principals, the vice principals, the in-charges, the students, the animators, the junior youth themselves, talking about the change that is taking place in their life. And I think you all noticed that the seating arrangement, the arrangements that they have done down the steps and all that, and just making it, trying to make it possible to just have a group of 10 to 12 students in each junior youth group. Okay, so we are now entering into the next session. May I request Mr. Roshan Roshan Gandhi Furuhi to please chair the session, and may I request Ms. Sangeeta Banerjee, please, to co-chair. And while we are waiting for Mr. Sarvinder Vikram Bahadur Singh to join us, he is the Honorable Director of Basic Education in the state of Uttar Pradesh. We will also have the opportunity of hearing our dear Marzia Dalal speak to us and giving us the perspective of the role of civil society. Over to you.
Thank you very much. I know it's getting close to lunch, but I hope we are still as hungry for knowledge as we are for food. I certainly am. Without much ado, we'll begin the proceedings. If we could invite Marzia, please do join us. We are having a discussion on the topic, the role of civil society in policy intervention. Now, the definition of civil society is very broad, and it always proves very difficult to come to that definition. In fact, I do some work with a think tank whose name is the Center for Civil Society. And at the beginning of every seminar of theirs, we start with trying to explore what is the meaning of civil society. And we always come to the conclusion that basically it's easier to define in terms of what it is not. It is not government,
secondary education and higher education for such a massive state,
any
and to be the
of human beings trying to act together to make some kind of change or impact in any sphere can be defined as civil society. And so we are going to discuss what is the role of that on policy intervention. So what is the role of people outside of the government in being able to influence the direction of policy? So we will begin with our first speaker, Mrs. Marzia Rohani Dalal. She was educated in Mumbai and has master's degrees in science and in law, very broad. She moved to Pune after marriage and works now as an independent corporate legal consultant and does a lot of social work as well, primarily in the field of moral education for children and young adults, since her professional work has made her keenly recognize the need for ethics and sound values in our 21st century society. She is a trustee of the Blue Cross Society, which is an animal welfare organization in Pune, and she is also a mother and housewife. So, Marzia, please, over to you.
How much time do I have? 15 minutes. So you tell me when to stop. So it's a pleasure to be here, and I'm replacing another speaker. So since what I've put together has not given me much time for preparation, I thank you for your patience with me in advance, and I'd be happy to hear your comments and questions too later. So as Roshan defined, civil society is difficult to define. Usually it is considered all those communities excepting for government and commercial societies, commercial communities, businesses, and so on. While I was trying to find out what is in the public domain about this subject, the role of civil society in more, I think I've tried to gear it towards character education. What is the role of civil society in character education? I was interested to see that there is one fairly recent research study that has been published. It had been undertaken in Indonesia, of all places, and it actually was exactly similar, parallel to our subject. It was interesting to see that
the children are involved in so
it
where
came to
words
certain
come out from the
conclusions, we shall also be deliberating on that in this one.
To you. And it said that the results of this study are, 1, the lack of an optimal role from parents. The second was that schools embed the concept of society in their students, but they need to strengthen the students' character. The third was that the civil society concept in social life is not implemented properly. And the fourth was some obstacles which result in the absence of good civil society are, and they outlined 5 obstacles. The first is a lack of character education. They put that first. After that was the community's high dependency on government, turning to blame government for everything and expecting that all our solutions are going to come from the government. A lack of facilities in relation to the children's development at school, and a lack of political education and communication, and the practice of nepotism and negative interests in relation to social justice. Now, as you can see, an unusual study related to the very subject we are talking about, and which highlights the need for character education if civil society is to change. Then the study went on to identify 3 social spaces which become the most important centers of education for our children. The first is the family, no surprises. The second is the school, no surprises. The third is youth group movements or activities. In other words, the third social space that influences our young people most powerfully is the activities and the movements that they become absorbed in. Now, it's interesting to see that what happens in the third movement when our children become youth and move beyond school and usually move beyond parents is that they enter a world which they haven't quite been prepared for. And that is what makes me realize that it is what happens in the first 2 spaces with parents and with schools that actually will define what young people will do when they enter the third space, which is the area of youth activities and youth movements. So let us now first look at what are these youth movements and activities. And we can define them on a very broad scope. For instance, youth activities, some are structured. They can join a sporting group, a drama group. They can become involved in an NGO. They can also become involved in political discussions, in political movements, and become the subject of influences that neither of the first 2 movements, parents and students, parents and schools, have any influence over them now. Let's then look at, for instance, unstructured societies. There's the entertainment that our young people choose for themselves. They can become involved in sports. They have leisure activities, and of course they have a lot of time in conversations with each other, with their peers. What happened in spaces 1 and 2 is what will decide their choices at this point of time. And I think let us understand that when young people enter, say, Standard 11 from a very, very protected environment, if they are no longer in schools, if they move into a college, we all know no longer is there a teacher in class waiting to take attendance and to inform parents if the child is absent. There is no one in college, in standard 11 or standard 12 or beyond, waiting to take attendance, worried that the child comes to school or not, to college or not. No one is there to give homework. They give what are called assignments. I'm not even going to tell you what and how assignments are being done. There are professors over there who know that youngsters have come in simply for attendance. They accept it. They literally talk to themselves or to the front bench. If you go to canteens, attendance in canteens outnumbers attendance in classrooms multiple times. So it is too high a jump for young people to go from an entirely protected environment to a completely unprotected and unregulated one. What have we done to prepare them for this? What do you do when a sheltered child is suddenly going to enter an unsheltered environment? You protect, you prepare, you train. That is what spaces 1 and 2, which in the article are the home and the school, have to do. And for that, that is when it is in these two spaces, while the child is moving towards the age of 15 or 16, that we have to build in them those good values, those virtues, those ethics, those morals, which the child is taught to choose, or rather trained to choose for herself or himself. Because outside of that sphere of standard 10, beyond that line, there is very little that we actually know of what the youngsters are doing with their 12 hours a day when they're outside of the home. Why would they choose to be good? Because logically they have been taught why it pays to be good rather than to be bad. Why would they choose to be with company that is a good influence on them? Because while they were in school and in the home, there was a series of conversations which asked them to identify where they would land up if they were in bad company. Then and only then do you have children who intrinsically choose to walk what we call the right
It's
path.
really
There is no doubt that as of today, our children more or less are on their own in the third space of wider society, being a part now of civil society. But the thought that I throw out for you all to consider is, do homes and do schools not see their need for their influence to also enter the third space when it comes to activities of young children, when it comes to matters of law, policy, when it comes to a lot of the liberalization of certain activities in society which we know are harmful, but which are permitted, licensed, allowed in the name of civil liberties. I am talking specifically, and we can talk, I think, frankly here, the kinds of entertainment that are available to anyone who can prove that she or he is 18 years and above. We are talking of the absolute lack of safeguards on the internet as to what young people can see and hear legitimately after the age of 18. We're talking about things that go in the name of sports and entertainment on our screens, at home, right
that we
in
can
the
do in
home.
schools. Therefore,
Do we
it
really,
requires
is
an
this something
investment.
that we want for our young people? Listen to the kind of conversations sometimes that young people have.
We have of us
I
leader
think
than
the safest conversation are the most meaningless ones. They become positively destructive sometimes. when they become gossip, they become backbiting, they turn to subversive things, divisive subjects, questions of identity, which are so damaging to the fabric of unity of society. Do we really believe that families cannot come together and voice what they want and don't want
Human being is
for
much
their
more than
teenagers and their young
can see
people?
better than okay.
Can
Experiment
schools
than a
also
bad news.
not see their power? The influence that they have had on children is an influence that they respect when they become adults and are sitting in seats of power, position, and decision making. I know, even as I say this, that parents and schools are completely overworked. But I see a very critical role for both of them to actually, as a part of civil society, begin taking up positions, begin making known what they know of child psychology, of what it takes to create a responsible adult in society today, to be able to start talking about what our free spaces should have and should not have. I look upon this as a role which is going to become inevitable unless mothers speak of what they don't want for their children. There was a movement, I remember about a generation ago, of mothers against war. Mothers who came together in a war-torn country and clearly said, we don't want to see our sons on the battlefield. We don't want to see them killed in war. They were not raised for this purpose. And they became a very powerful voice when it came to the future, the decisions that were made about continuing war and not. These are things where family and schools have no substitute, because no one knows those children or cares for them the way these two communities do.
Effort.
Till then, till such time as schools and families find the means to start coming together and becoming heard, we have to focus on inoculating our children against the attractions, the lure attractions and the negative influences of wider society. The clip that we just saw, which I thought was so appropriate just before this talk, about what the Junior Youth Program does, has actually highlighted one particular aspect of young people, which I would like to stress here. It is the training process, of course, is wonderful. They realize, as they say, the skills of listening to others, the skills of looking for solutions for those other than themselves. Younger children, they learn to analyze and seek help for others, to serve them. Most importantly, these young people have to be told that they are the role models and inspiration in society once they leave our schools and homes. And I see this as being our greatest challenge. And the Junior Youth Program is one that seems to be a good structured program that can take it forward, that our young people, in serving wider society, also become inspirations to the rest of society. And I hope that these are some of the things that will now create more and more of the conversations that go on, not just between those who are in the sphere of education and may perhaps also bring in parents, but I do hope that more and more people who are sitting there making decisions, who are part of what we call civil society, and not just civil society, but now we are also speaking of commercial entities and of government agencies, should need to hear what we have been hearing and talking about over here. Thank you.
extend a very, very heartfelt gratitude to Ms. Marzia Dalal for a very, very impactful and your insightful nuggets. Thank you so much, ma'am. You're a venerable speaker, and we really enjoyed what you said. Our takeaway from what you have said is definitely, though character is intrinsic, it is what our basic nature is. We need to nurture it continuously, and this happens in all the three spaces that you spoke about. The first space being the home, that is a family, the school, and the most important is when the children move out from a protected to an unprotected environment or the space, that is the youth or the group activities. And then that is when we need to actually inoculate them. Since we've had great deliberations over the last 2 days, over this very, very meaningful conference, this word character, what I have summed up is, as it is exactly, it's a sum total of what we are. So character for CHARACTER, our takeaways could be character for C, compassionate and concerned, H for honest, A for being affirmative and affectionate, R for respectful, A for being adaptable and abiding to all law and rules, C for cooperative, T for very being tolerant, E for empathetic, and R for responsible. So if we have all these, absolutely, the A to Z, but encapsulated in the word character. So if we have just these, I think it'll help us all to become much better people, hoping to bring in better changes even in our children and evolving each day ourselves. Thank you so much, ma'am. Mr. Rush.
Now, if you caught me sort of fiddling with my phone in between, it's not because I'm a delinquent, characterless youth who's addicted to his phone, but because we have been coordinating for the next guest, who is going to join us within about 10 minutes. So in between, we have some time for questions. Before I open the floor to questions, forgive me if there are other examples in the room, but there is one example that I'm aware of, in particular from amongst our guests, where civil society has impacted on character education very directly in terms of policy. Mr. Jeff Smith, I understand that some of your work has, caught the ears of relevant people in the education department of the United Kingdom. Which is a perfect example of, civil society impacting government. So if you wouldn't mind just sharing, just for a minute or two, just a rough overview of what is happening in that space, and then we will open the floor to questions.
If you hit me, if I overshoot like I did this morning. Yes, the UK government has gradually got more and more interested in the idea of character education, but it has peaks and troughs. One minister will become in charge of education who will be very concerned about character education, and then the next one will let it drop. And Birmingham University has a department called the Jubilee Centre, which had funding from the Templeton Trust, and with their guidance, we established an association of character education, because the government doesn't listen to individuals in the sphere of education. It consults bodies, associations. So that's why we set up the Association of Character, hold an annual conference, and the government has finally committed, most importantly, in the body that it uses to inspect schools, Ofsted, it has a framework for inspection, and they've published a new inspection framework, and that has stated that a school will not be able to pass its inspection, if you like, to become a good school or an outstanding school, unless it explicitly develops children's character. So that's a huge move forward for our country, because it will mean that schools will, I suppose, be forced to look at what they're doing for the character of their children. Of course, many schools do wonderful work with this. So that's one way in which it's had effect.
Great. Thank you very much, Jeff, for enlightening us with that. Now, if I may open the floor to any questions for Ms. Marzia. Yes, please.
Thank you, ma'am, because that was really nice to think of the third sphere. But I was also talking of the fourth sphere. My generation lives to be 90. I think our children who we teach will live to be 100. We study for exams, and we do not take exams after 25 years of age. For the 75 years that I'm going to live, and when I retire at 60, for the next 40 years that I live without a job, isn't the 75 years more important than the 25 years of just teaching for an exam? So could you just elaborate for us 2 or 3 things that the schools should be doing in order to prepare them for the 75 years of their life when they don't take an exam, and for the 30 or 40 years of their life when they're leading retired life? Thank you.
Shalini, you're preaching to the converted. That's exactly what I'm trying to say, that the vision of education has to actually be go much further. The scope has to be larger. As you absolutely rightly said, if you are training them just for career and job, certainly it's not enough. And you've actually brought it down to numbers. The number of years that we will work till retirement age, and then the number of years we continue to live beyond. What do you do with your time, your talents, your capabilities, your wisdom then? And at that point of time, we are not open to learning the way we are when we are young. So it is a fact. The entire framework of education probably needs to be opened up. I heard during your talk some of the comments that came in from behind, that a lot of girl students realize that they are not equal. They're not living in in communities where they are treated as equals. Absolutely right, but are we teaching them how to deal with that? Instead of giving way to anger, resentment, and rebellion. And more importantly, are we teaching the young men about equality? You know, we keep thinking that it's women who need to learn about equality. I completely differ. I think it's the men who need to learn about equality. So are we doing that? Are we learning about marriage? I'm a lawyer. I'm in the legal field. I know the kind of problems that emerge simply because young people have been given these rose-tinted specs through which they look at romance and falling in love and living happily ever after. How many married people do we have here? Put up your hands, please. Is marriage about romance and falling in love and living happily ever after? Not at all. But why aren't young people hearing about this? Why don't they hear more about the reality of a marriage and how to make it work? How to make it, sustain it to be meaningful and a joyous experience. So these are the things that the curriculum does not put into education. Who is the curriculum being made by? In India, education is a central subject and a state subject. So by and large, we have the bureaucracy that decides upon education. And I think they have a few consultative sessions with educationists to hear their point of view. Is that enough? Is that being reflected in the syllabi and the exams and the systems which constitutes education today in our country? I think clearly the answer is no. But who's going to start changing it? If not us, certainly it has to be the young people who are going through the portals of our school, isn't it? Aren't they the ones who have to learn that they have bigger issues to engage with? perhaps our parents of the school. Many of them hold influential positions. They should become the ones who are listening to our conversations. Does that answer your question?
Thank you very much. Do we have any further questions from the audience on this topic? Yes.
Yes, ma'am, I do agree with you. Like, the children got a protected life. They don't make a choice at home, neither at school. Everything is decided by the parents or the teachers. They don't go for their passion or interest or talent. They are forced to study. Even they want to play, they are not allowed even at home in the evenings. They are forced to study and study and study. So when they get a protected life, when they get the independence in college, they want to do whatever they want to. So they are not able to make a right choice at that time. So we have to prepare them, and how it is possible without involving parents in this meeting. Like in the school, the parents are equally important. Like where the student, parents, and the teachers and the management, everybody should come together to work for this. Thank you.
I'm going to briefly answer that question, and then would you like to add your thoughts to it? No, please do. I'm sorry I omitted mentioning this because I took it for granted. If spaces 1 and 2, home and school, have to come together to influence space 3, how on earth can they do it if they're not on the same side? If they themselves are not constantly talking to each other? Because then your forces go in different directions. They need to have the same vision, the same framework. So I think this disconnect between schools and parents is very, very damaging to the entire subject of education. And I don't really think that there is such a divide. I think by and large it's imaginary, because I have seen that when there is a warm, open atmosphere created for parents to come in and speak to teachers and principals, where it's not a threatening, complaining kind of environment, but where it's honestly a meeting of equals, that we are both equal stakeholders in the future of children's interests and the interests of education as a whole, what comes out is very positive. There's an immense solidarity that's developed in schools that have learned to get, not learned, but which have made an honest effort and got the parents on their side. It can't go forward without parents, very clearly.
I think my experience as a head teacher is that if parents feel that you know who their child is really, who their virtues character, then it really builds that engagement with the school. And so we ask the children to write an analysis of their own virtues, what their strength virtue, one that they're strong in and one that they need to grow in. And we put that on their report, so it's written by the child. And then when we have the parental evening, that's shared with the parent. And I think helps to build. It's one way that you can build engagement, because the parent can see that that you're really interested in who their child is really, that you've given them, the parent, meaningful recognition for the child that they've created and educated. I think what mitigates against that is if the parent's coming into a school where you're just going to say, well, your child scored this and this is where they're weak, and because I think most parents then, that resonates with their own experience in school, which was possibly demeaning or stressful, and that's why I think many parents don't want to engage with their school, at least in the UK, if they've had a bad education experience. So, my experience is you can build parental engagement if parents know that you're going to talk about something meaningful with them.
Thank you.